Speaking of things that everybody will object to, we all love democracy, right? You love democracy
more than
don't you?
anything else.
Yeah, Carl
More
got
than
the
the
right
lives of
answer.
my own children.
But I am an extremist, according to the Home Office.
I
so
mean,
that's fine.
how many foreign wars would you be willing to fund for the sake of foreign democracies?
Well, okay, so
Not that this has anything to do with foreign democracies. This has everything to do with our democracy and the fact that it will be never ending.
So the one argument in favour of democracy that is good is at least it is a mechanism through which we can non-violently remove politicians we don't like. Right, that is actually a good argument in favour of democracy.
That's a great argument, but in practicality,
Yes.
Hang on. However, you are right. We have now been saddled with Keir Starmer for the next 5 years, with basically near dictatorial powers when nobody wanted it.
and you can be damn sure that they're going to use those powers, because there has been a recent announcement that Labour has a plan for change to deliver the biggest transfer of power out of Westminster to England's regions for a century. Now, that sounds great, right?
That does sound quite good, actually.
Decentralising government, right? Okay, so that's a great way of selling it to people.
Yeah,
People don't like centralised governments. I mean, realistically, Britain is one of the most centralised governments in all of Europe, and has been probably the most for over 1,000 years.
For nearly, well, for at least about
for almost
700 years. It's
Yeah,
been
for a very, very long time. But how will this actually play out? Sorry, Connor?
Well, I was going to say, if they're going to sell us on this idea, do they have to choose the most vacant, blank expression photo of Angela Rayner?
That's the only photo that they can
Angela
get of
Rayner.
Angela Rayner.
arrives in the lauded halls of English constitutional reformers, you know, alongside the Magna Carta,
you joke.
barons of.
You joke. But
do,
this is a massive change to Britain's England's constitution that's going to be made, right? And in the history books, it will have her face
Angela
and
Rayner.
her name plastered all over it, alongside with Keir Starmer. So what does this mean? The government has done a devolution white paper that was published on Monday, and Rayner described it as ensuring regional powers are no longer agreed the whim of a minister in Whitehall. It comes after ministers warned that they would be prepared to step in if plans to build more prisons, wind turbines and homes met opposition at a local level.
So it's about abolishing.
These two things seem like they're polar opposites of one another, wouldn't you say? Ms. Rayner's Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government said Labour's devolution policy will allow regional leaders to guide development projects across areas, housing, transport and skills. England's regions will be centre stage in the government's mission to grow the economy and build 1.5 million homes. She did say it in her speech. Proposals to create so-called strategic authorities across England, bringing together councils in areas where people live and work, will be among the measures outlined. The ministry said this would help to avoid duplication and give our cities and regions a bigger voice. So the plan is, essentially, in Britain, we have a patchwork of local government where there are small designated areas which are councils, and you can get different varieties of councils, but generally they're all supposed to represent the local people and represent the local needs and desires and what they want doing in that local area. What this is going to do is abolish all of the smaller councils and reform them into much larger mega councils over a larger area. So, for instance, if I just skip to the end right here, this is already going to be taking place in Lancashire, where it's got 15 councils, right?
Yeah.
But what they're planning on doing is abolishing them and replacing them with just about 3 or 4 local authorities, whilst also creating at the same time a Lancashire mayor who has top-down power over all of these regional authorities. So in a supposed apparent, they say, effort to devolve the powers and decentralise government, this is a massive centralisation of government. Along with this, and I'll get into this in a few minutes, it will also create a number of other larger regional councils that have overarching power over all of these other ones, to create a sort of feedback loop of never-ending democracy where you're constantly voting for this council and this council and this council and this council, and these councils are constantly voting for one another and they're constantly exchanging things. So basically the never-ending conversation of democracy where nothing gets done except at the diktat, presumably, of these mayors who are going to be Labour stooges.
But also the very nature of it. Okay, I'm actually quite in favour of local councils being responsible for local affairs and responsive to local people. That's actually quite a good idea. And if that's democracy, okay, that's fine. I'm all in favour of it. But what they're doing here is essentially abstracting into the managerial frame. So essentially, they're removing those traditional institutions and instantiating these new, broader, more distant bureaucratic things that are going to deal with problems on the ground. So essentially, you're exactly right. This is just going to be a massive expansion of the bureaucratic nature of the state.
Well, the way that they're going to do this as well by turning them into fiefdoms is in creating mayors, you're creating personality figureheads who have a vested interest because they're associated as a personality with the party to do the party's bidding so that they can retain their seat and keep their job. Because if participation in local elections is very low, participation in mayoral elections is slightly higher, particularly if you're a polarising figure like a Sadiq Khan type. And so they are going to have a lot of loyalty to what the party wants them to do so that they get funding for their next re-election campaign. So if the party wants, as Angela Rayner has already said, Operation Scatter, where she's going to replicate the ugly cities of Milton Keynes all over the Greenbelt.
Let's not forget that they've taken away the regulations that mean that new housing has to be beautiful.
Exactly. And
why did they do that? Anyway.
You know why they did that.
And also they're changing the definition of Greenbelt land to ensure that you can build over the countryside to battery farm foreign nationals. Because
the way that they're selling it is that these new local authorities will have to reconsider some of these areas of Greenbelt land that they have.
Yeah.
So the London School of Economics is thrilled about this, I assume.
Yes, because 5 in 7 of these new homes is going to new foreign nationals that will be imported over the same period of house building. All of this is just to create mini despots, mini regional despots that are answerable to the Labour Party so that local councils can't block massive housing developments to airdrop foreign nationals into your area.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because I know people on local councils, and this is one of the things they do all the time. Because, of course, the locals don't want, actually, a massive tenement full of weird foreigners running around the countryside.
Well, if I jump to the actual Devolution white paper, which is published on the government website, it is all about the 1.5 million homes.
They literally say this word for word.
Yeah. Mayors, they say, are integral to delivering the 1.5 million homes committed to in this parliament. Therefore, we will support these new powers where all areas with or without a strategic authority will have to produce a spatial development strategy which will be adopted with support from a majority of constituent members. This policy change means that more homes will get built. Mayors will also be given new development management powers, similar to those exercised by the Mayor of London. This will include the ability to call in planning applications of strategic importance. In conjunction with these powers, mayors will be able to charge developers a mayoral levy to ensure that new developments come with the necessary associated infrastructure, etc., etc. So just like in Greater London with the Elizabeth line. To enable mayors to deliver on their plans, we will forge a stronger partnership between Homes England and established mayoral strategic authorities, increasing Homes England's accountability to mayors. So it sounds like these mayors are going to have in their areas a hell of a lot of power. And you brought up an interesting point, Connor, which was about the actual low turnout of local elections already as it is. If you all of a sudden have all of these new different regional places which you have to start voting for on a yearly basis, shall we? Potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Right. How much lower is local council elections going to turn out to be?
People don't care now.
Yeah, if it's more of a constant process, the actual idea of this never-ending democracy is not that politicians are held more accountable, it's that voters become more apathetic.
Yeah, weary.
Yes, because they don't want to involve themselves in the process, especially when they begin to see that the process doesn't actually have much of an effect on what they get out of the other end of it.
Yeah, they're trying to anaesthetise you to manage decline.
And if you want to talk about the more decentralized areas as well. So they say in here, new forums such as the Council of Nations and Regions, chaired by the Prime Minister, and the Mayoral Council, chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister, will change the ability to do particular things. Mayors will have a statutory duty to produce local growth plans, which will hardwire their local growth priorities into the way the UK government works. So infinity migrants to make sure that you've always got that line going up. And also, these new councils councils being chaired by the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister does not sound particularly decentralised.
Yeah, not very independent if the government is literally going to sit on the board and give them the orders.
Yes. But back to some of the other stuff. You mentioned about how diffuse this whole thing will be. People have already started to worry about the fact that people will be living up to about 50 miles from their town hall under these new plans. They say here, critics warn the Prime Minister's devolution revolution could lead to mega councils and take the powers away from local communities. Districts have already been abolished in North Yorkshire, meaning that residents in Selby have to travel almost 50 miles to the county's headquarters in North Allerton. Now, if this is sounding familiar to any of the viewers right now, that's because I've basically covered this before with this document that was released back in late 2022, A New Britain, Renewing Our Democracy and Rebuilding Our Economy. Now, this was a policy document that was supervised and written, I believe,
by Gordon Brown.
And it was essentially a way to completely upend the unwritten constitution of the UK and put in all of these new areas that can be made into Labour strongholds to make sure that Blair's revolution can later never be changed.
It also instantiates a constitutional right to the NHS and a constitutional right to apply for welfare if you are just on the soil, regardless of citizenship.
Can we also take a moment to appreciate just how representative this image is of the bureaucratic managerial mindset? It is a series of lines and nodes. There is nothing natural about this. It is the country with everything important drained out of it so that the manager can literally, this is how the spreadsheet would look. Right, okay, well, I need to know what these... It's just...
It literally looks like it's got slight heat map dots underneath it as well. So we will allocate resources according to the heat map. You might as well just run
these urban
governments through an AI.
It also looks like Shelob has captured the entire country.
It does, but like there's nothing natural or normal or traditional. This is a literally, like say, an AI map of like the important nodes for the bureaucratic managers. Like that's all this is. That's their world view, perfectly encapsulated here.
Oh, absolutely. And when I say that they want to make sure that this is put in place so that it can never be changed in the future, well, they're making sure of that because they're already starting to delay local elections in preparation for these changes. So as part of her white paper, every area governed by two-tier county and district councils will be asked to submit plans for mergers to create larger unitary authorities with about 500,000 people in each. Ministers say such a change will help empower authorities, but is also likely to mean elections in some areas will have to be delayed. Jim McMahon, the local government minister, said on Monday that the government may look at postponing some elections till next year, but added it won't be for longer than a couple of months, a year, which means indeterminate amount of time until it's already irreversible.
Well, that's because these local government elections are referenda on Keir Starmer's very unpopular prime ministership. So if Labour are defeated in local elections and mayoral elections across the country, it sends a very strong message that their policies are unpopular. So they also don't want the bad PR.
Well, also, just to point out as well, this New Britain document that they're basing all of this off was not in their manifesto, was not a promise at the election.
They didn't exactly spend a lot of time rhetorically arguing for it, did they?
No, this was not mentioned. This is nothing that anybody voted for. So if you want to talk about, democracy, they do not have a democratic mandate to do such a thing.
Nope.
Although, to be fair, I will say this has also been done under the Tories because they also did it in Cumbria, Somerset and North Yorkshire, who all delayed their 2021 elections by a year as they went through similar reorganisation. Now, again, it's a bit complicated to envision, so happily I was actually pointed towards this video, which obviously does not have many views. I'm not familiar with the gentleman who made it, but it was a pretty good video and had a bit where he goes through the different layout of government in the UK up until now. So this was before Blair, where you, the voter, vote for your local council, and you, the voter, vote for MPs, and it gives power to the government, who give bills to the Lords, who have any ability to veto if they want. After Blair's revolution, what happened was more like this, where they don't have it as hereditary, the rest are appointed to the ruling party. So what's it going to look like under this, under the New Britain document? Well, it's going to actually just look like this. Okay, so you, the voter, you vote for your local MPs, but then you also vote for your metro mayors, your local council. Also, potentially, trade unions will be involved directly in this. And then, obviously, if you're in the devolved assemblies like Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, you also vote for those. They all have to speak to the Council of England, who then report to the Council of the UK. They report to the Council of the Nations and the Regions, and they have a back and forth with the Assembly of the Nations and Regions. So what this gentleman Shire strike describes this as is a setting up of a number of different Soviets.
This is the EUization of Britain.
It's stakeholder governance.
Yeah, but this is very similar to the weird and insanely convoluted governance structure of the European Union. Right? It's various things, and so the average person has just no idea how it works, and that's by design.
And because I'll be honest, looking at this diagram, I'm just looking at it going, how on earth is this going to work? What's the point of the Council of the UK and the Council of England if they both have to report to these people and they have to report to the Assembly of the Regions and Nations, who are in direct communication with the government back and forth? What's going to be the relationship between all of them? He also points out as well there are other parts of it where they have the new rights in the New Britain document, which include health. Every person entitled to healthcare in the UK, not citizens,
Just person.
not people born in this country, not even people who were given a piece of paper, just every person will receive it free at the point of need where they are in any part of the UK. No person shall be denied emergency treatment. Education. Every child shall be entitled to free primary and secondary education wherever they are in any part of the UK, which is one of the reasons they're attacking the public schools. Poverty. So that no child, family or elderly citizen need live in poverty, every person legitimately present in the UK shall be entitled to social assistance in relation to periods of unemployment, disability or old age in accordance with the relevant laws. No person shall be left destitute. So being poor will be illegal.
Nick Timothy, Conservative MP, actually put a question.
That's just a funny way to frame it.
Being poor will be illegal. Except not in a cool, despotic way. In a really lame communist way, where everybody's just going to be poor, so nobody can technically be poor.
Yeah, exactly. The government will make itself essentially in violation of the law if it doesn't provide them with money.
Well, they're going to. So Nick Timothy put in a letter to the Home Office because he disputed Yvette Cooper's numbers on the asylum system, saying it's going to save billions, and it turns out it's going to cost an extra 17 odd trillion a year. Sorry, billion a year.
I was going to say
because,
trillion.
Sorry.
We haven't got any money, bro.
17 billion a year. The reason is they're going to move the asylum budget to the welfare budget because every single legal migrant is going to be able to claim the full spectrum of welfare benefits as soon as they arrive, which has the convenient excuse of hiding the costs of asylum in the welfare budget. They don't need to differentiate because it looks bad. I've covered this on Tomlinson Talks before around this document as well.
Yeah, and of course it also says that every person shall be entitled to decent accommodation, that being housing, which 1.5 million homes, but in the same amount of time that we're expected to build those 1.5 million, we'll have 2.5 million new arrivals in the country. As you mentioned, 5 in 7 of these new homes will be going to these new arrivals in the country. So it's a moot point, and it's completely unmanageable, completely chaotic.
It's crazy.
But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because this is an insane cultural and governmental revolution of how the country works.
Just the thing on this, what are they trying to achieve here? Right? What are they actually trying to do? And this genuinely is the most extreme expression of the Rousseauian form of liberalism, where the government recreates the state of nature as Rousseau has envisaged it. As in, Rousseau was like, oh no, the nature provides man with everything he needs. He's always got somewhere to sleep. He's always got food. He's always got everything that he wants. And when you exchange your natural rights for civil rights, well, then it becomes the government's job to provide everything that nature purportedly provided to pre-social man. And so that's exactly what we're seeing here. These are all of the things that Rousseau would have us do through the state. And it's just, okay, great. We're finally moving into the sort of final phase of liberalism, where the government is literally the thing that provides everything to the country.
Yes, but if we remember, some are more equal than others.
That's true.
And if you are a client group of the government, you still get yours. Or if you are a group that helps fund the government, for instance, you still get yours, because union chiefs are already starting to draw up the industrial strategy for Labour.
Oh yeah, have they been thinking a lot about the relationship to the means of production, have they?
Maybe, maybe not. I think they've mainly just been thinking about how much they can make from all this.
Yeah, doubtless.
Yeah, so that's the Neverending Democracy. It is currently rolling forwards in motion. We've got the devolution plans moving forward nicely. And so next we just need, housing to be made a human right and poverty to be outlawed.
Well, I mean, they literally are saying that house is going to become a human right.
Well, it'll be interesting how they outlaw poverty.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing how they manage that.
Well, you've got to remember that nature provides fruit just from the trees and, fish in the rivers.
If we live in the Garden of Eden, you don't need to go
That's literally what they're thinking.
What they're going to do is abolish relative poverty by making us all poor.
Well, yeah. I mean, destitute is
on
a
global
relative
scale.
Term.
On a global scale, aren't we all super rich?
Yeah, thank God I'm just as rich as Nancy Pelosi.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you could always follow Connor's series, Tomlinson Talks. This one is talking about how Islamists influence the UK government. If you want to see all of the other things that we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.